Okay, so giving is receiving. Um, to me, this is the most important part of the whole course. It's like the ultimate thought reversal idea that, you know, in our society sometimes we have these like misunderstandings, like we get things backwards. Um, like the world is flat, or the world or the sun revolves around the world, and then one day someone comes along and says, hey, actually, if you look at it, it doesn't really work like that. And at first there's people who resist it, which is normal, but eventually we kind of just realize, oh yeah, it's kind of obvious actually. So the giving is receiving one, to me, is kind of like the heart of A Course in Miracles. So I kind of want to describe what it means very simply. When you think about giving and receiving, most of us would think about how that works in worldly things. If you give money, or you help someone with some problem that they're going through, or any kind of worldly thing. And obviously in the Eastern traditions, and of course as well in some other religions, there's this idea of karma. Like you do something for someone else, and then later in time you get that back. um, Even though that's not like, in my opinion, there is kind of an interpretation where that fits into the course, kind of. Obviously the whole notion of karma and everything involving time and punishment for the past, like this stuff is all um, is different, but there is an element of giving in the world does actually um, does actually it is a form of giving in a way, but it's not the main point. And if you understand the main point of giving is receiving, you'll be able to fit all that in the appropriate context. So giving as receiving works at the level of the mind. So what does that mean? Basically what happens is that to give is to take an attribute and to project it out. That's what it means to give. Now in the course it talks a lot, it's like very frequently emphasized that perception is projection. Projection makes perception, which is to say that the information that comes to us through our eyes, through our senses, and all this stuff that is telling us about the world, it's not really telling us about the world, it's telling us what we are choosing to see. So there's this idea in the course where it says, first you choose a purpose. Like, this is how seeing works. First you choose a purpose, and then you look through your eyes and you see that purpose reflected back at you. So if you choose guilt as your purpose, then you'll look through your eyes and you'll see a world that reflects guilt back to you. But if you choose innocence, then you look at the world and you'll see innocence reflected back to you. And that's kind of at the level that the course is speaking at. And actually, it kind of explains that really is the only level that there is. Like, that really is the only giving you can do. So think about it like this. Let's say I give someone $100 or £100 or whatever. What am I really doing? What really matters? What's like the bottom line of that? Is it really about the money? Is it that this person gains in their bank account and I lose in my bank account? Because if we're thinking in that framework, then obviously giving is losing, right? If you give £100 away, then you lose £100. But what if you were to unpack what money really is, what is it? I mean, it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but it's the meaning. Like, we give it meaning, and meaning comes from the mind. So for one person, money might be security, for example. It might be like it might get a sense of safety from having money. And so then in a way, when you give money, you're kind of giving someone a sense of safety, even though it's, by course standards, it is misplaced. But if you think about things happening at the level of the mind, that's really the gift, right? So if that person, let's say, didn't really care about money, didn't really mean much, and maybe for you it didn't mean much, then you give $100, you lose nothing, they gain nothing, nothing happens, right? Because it's completely about the meaning that we put onto things. So, and if you were to unpack that even more, you find that, well, let's take security, for example. So you have, with money, you might have a sense of security. But what is that ultimately? It's like, it's a feeling. It's a mood. It's like a state of mind, right? To feel secure. Like, what's the point of security if you don't actually feel secure? And I think this is what happens. If you're someone who likes to accumulate money or do things like this, it's like you're doing it maybe to, like, let's just hypothetically say you're someone that enjoys the security of money. And even the word enjoy has within it the word joy, right? Like, I enjoy having a lot of money. Well, what do you enjoy about it? The joy that comes from it, So in a way, everything that we do, everything that has meaning to us, it's like we create a world from the inside out, and then we navigate within this world. Actually, in course terms, you wouldn't create a world, you'd make up a world, right? Because it's an illusion. Because you can change it. You can change the way you think about things and what has meaning to you and all this stuff. But you make up a world with all of its laws, all of its meaning, and then you kind of engulf yourself in it, and then you forget that you made it, and you start navigating through your own maze. Self-made maze, right? So when it comes to money, for example, you have that security, which is a feeling. You have the enjoyment of money, which is also the feeling of joy. It's joy and safety, right? Joy and safety and peace of mind. If you notice all of the best, like, advertising, techniques, they always say, oh, you have to focus on the feeling of the state of mind of the person, and make that, associate that with the product, right? So, like, you drive down the highway or the motorway or whatever, and there's an ad, and it says, get this cheesecake for your, or, it's the best is the insurance ones, but, like, yeah, you see someone drinking Coca-Cola, and then it's like, oh, feel the refreshment, it's all like trying to appeal to your emotions. And that's because the people that are advertising kind of understand that fundamentally we're all kind of driven by wanting to feel better. So if you understand that what really matters, like, okay, I'm going to say this. So if you have joy, you have safety, you have, happy, like, all of these positive things, I'll just put them under the umbrella and call it happiness. So happiness, there's no fear, you have a sense of trust, you have a sense of safety, you're kind of skipping in your step, you're joyful, all these things. I'll just call that happiness. And so everyone, in one way or another, is seeking for that. And I think it's one of those things that not many people like to admit, because people say, oh, I don't care about happiness. But then if you look at what they do, you'll see that they're trying to support themselves to feel better in some way. You might have someone say, well, health is more important than happiness. But what does health give you? Like physical health. Health gives you a good feeling body, which is to do with your well-being, and well-being is an emotional state. So it's like we're all kind of in a way navigating to that state. Now, okay, how does this tie back into giving and receiving? Well, all of this is to say that everything that we do in the world, the final destination is actually a state of mind. So we're all looking for a state of mind. And if you understand that's the case, then you might be more open to explore different avenues, right? You might be less fixated on like, oh, physical health is the way to happiness, or money is the way to happiness, or relationships, or having lots of social connections, or having communities, or whatever. Like whatever we do in the world. And so by understanding that, it's kind of like you're sort of raising the level of which you the goal you're raising. What's a better way of saying this? You're kind of like exposing the actual goal, which allows you to approach it in different ways. And in the course, it says forgiveness is the key to happiness, which is a very simple statement, right? Forgiveness is the key to happiness. So this is like the answer to the question of like reaching that final destination, you could say. Okay, giving and receiving. So all of this ties back to giving and receiving. And if you understand giving and receiving, then you also understand forgiveness, because they're kind of the same. Well, forgiveness rests on the idea that giving is receiving. And when I say forgiveness, I don't mean, the classical worldly sense, which is basically like kind of saying, yeah, you're evil, you did this, but, I forgive you anyway. That's not the Course's version of forgiveness. Giving and receiving is basically a statement of the laws of the mind. And it's actually really obvious. It's actually really, really simple when you get down to it. If you have a thought in your head, it stays in your head, right? Like, thoughts aren't made up in your head and then take on a reality outside it. And when I say head, I mean mind, right? Like, if you close your eyes and you imagine a pink dragon, that pink dragon is fundamentally made of your imagination. And you gave it life. You imagined it into being. And it only exists so long as you imagine it to be that way. Because it comes from you. And in the Course, it says, ideas leave not their source. That's one of like the fundamental ideas, which ties very nicely into giving and receiving. Ideas leave not their source is just a way of saying whatever you make up stays in your head. Like, and it's kind of obvious. The thing that's not obvious is that we make exceptions to that. So we'll say, for example, I didn't make that up. Let's say someone in the world is, you don't like them. Maybe they did something wrong. They did something bad. To take ownership and say, I made you up. I made you up in my head. That is a prerequisite to forgiveness. And it rests on the idea that ideas leave not their source. And it rests on the idea that giving is receiving, right? And this is the whole thing, right? You give the guilt away. You're giving it away to someone to try to get rid of it in yourself. Right? So it's like, it starts with this thing that's, I wouldn't say subconscious, but you could say that maybe escapes awareness if you don't look for it. But you have this thing, so it says, I did something wrong, I'm guilty. How do I get rid of this guilt? What do I do with it? Oh, I'll put it on you. Now you're guilty. All of that is still happening in the mind. It's still imagination. It's still a fabrication, a machination, right? It's all just made up. But to believe that giving is losing, right? Because that's what we believe. We believe that to give something away means you lose it in yourself. So if you give away your guilt, suddenly you're innocent, right? And if you zoom into that and you look at how that mentality plays out in everything everyone does, and like how people think in this culture, you'll see it everywhere. It's everywhere. It's like this, the core, the very, like the kernel of a thought system that expands into so many different symptoms. So basically, when you have that, well, we'll get into that in a second, but if you have guilt in you, if is a better word, if you were to have truly had guilt in you, and you give it away, and then you shut off, you convince yourself that giving is losing, then you say, oh, I'm innocent. Why am I innocent? Because you're guilty. And that is the like absolute essential like core of the ego thought system. Now the thing is, it doesn't work like that, right? Just because like as an analogy, you can't just turn gravity off, right? You can pretend that gravity doesn't pull you down, but it does. And with the laws of the mind, which were created by God and created also by like actually simple common sense, whatever you make up is what you make up, and it stays in your mind. So when you call someone else guilty, when you try to get rid of guilt, right? And if you see, you have to understand that projection makes perception. So like to say, I didn't make that up, it wasn't me, they just popped into the world randomly, caused havoc, and now we're stuck with them. You know, that's the mentality that we go with. It wasn't me, someone else did it, I'm innocent. Though this person, though, like this person's really bad. And you see what happens with the giving is losing mentality is that you actually believe it's a delusion. It's actually delusional. Like you believe that you're defined by the opposite of someone else. So you believe that you say, I'm guilty because, well, it works both ways. I'm innocent because you're guilty, right? So basically, because that's just backwards, you have to reverse it, right? You have to understand that projection makes perception, ideas leave not their source, and of course, giving is receiving. So if you understand those ideas, and another thing that comes along with that, you'll see all the ideas in A Course in Miracles kind of they are kind of self-confirming, but in a way that is sane and reasonable, because in the ego thought system things are self-confirming, but in a kind of chaotic, insane way. The power of the mind is the most powerful thing in the universe. In fact, it's not even a thing. It's literally, the universe came from the mind and it hasn't left the mind. But if you pretend, oh, my mind is just this little tiny brain in this body sandwiched in between the past and the future, which I have no control over, and it's just like me stuck in this world I was just born into haphazardly, and I have no power to change anything except, use my hands to maybe fight people who are evil, or I don't know. That idea has to be reversed, and really, projection makes perception is basically saying that the world outside you doesn't really exist. It's like it's all imagination, which is why like that idea and forgiveness go together, because then you can truly take ownership. And this is kind of like an essential part of the course. You have to take ownership. If you're dreaming a dream, you have to recognize that you are the dreamer. It's not someone else dreaming the dream or something else dreaming the dream or random atoms that came together and randomly created things. Like, that's not what happened. The dreams come from the mind. And you have to recognize that the dream comes from you. And it hasn't left your mind. It's still in your mind, which is why you can change your mind. You know, change your mind, change the world. The two are the same. So, but that has to be understood in order for forgiveness to make sense. Because when you're forgiving, you're actually removing something from your mind that you made up. So when you remove something from your mind that made up, if it's not real, then it'll disappear, right? And you know, in the metaphysics of the course, what is reality? Reality is God's creation, which is everything that is loving, peaceful, joyful, eternal, infinite, unlimited, all of these things. That is the sum total. That's what makes up the kingdom of heaven, which is the only reality. So if you see something that is not of that quality in any form, guess what? It's made up. But in order to fully take ownership, you have to recognize that it has no independent reality. It's something that you made up in your mind. And yeah, that's kind of the prerequisite to giving is receiving. So that kind of is like ties into ideas leave not their source, right? If something doesn't leave your mind, it takes no form. That means it's still in your mind, which means you can change your mind. That's why perception makes projection, and all of that is why giving and receiving is the most powerful reversal idea, because it's like the final point. It's saying, okay, now that you understand all these things, you need to understand that giving is receiving. What does that mean? It means if I give my innocence to you, or if I choose to see your innocence, what am I giving? I'm giving innocence. So what am I receiving? Innocence. And that is the heart of it. So to give, right? To give is like, it's almost like, to give is to decide to see the world or anything in a certain light. So when you give, what you're giving is what you're receiving. And you can't have here, like, no, this, I could go down that. Maybe I should save this for another video. If you're watching this for anyway, you're probably interested in what I'm saying, so I'll just tangent here. The body. Okay, so let's rewind. Let's rewind back to the original thought, which so when God created you as pure mind, nothing else, no physicality, none of that, just mind with the ability to create and to extend the kingdom of heaven, which is essentially to basically will creation, to create, to co-create, but in heaven, which is different from the physicality, and I'll explain why that's the case in a second. When you have this need, let's say you have an idea of guilt, because that's how it starts, right? An idea of guilt. Oh, I'm guilty. Then it's, wait, hold on. I lost my innocence. Now I have this guilt thing. How do I get rid of it? I'm going to project it out. and it's going to land on something or someone else or something that isn't me, then I'm going to create a barrier. I'm going to pretend that I have a weak mind, because if I have a weak mind, that means I didn't make this up. That means that's really real, which means I'm really innocent because I'm defined by what the thing that I'm perceiving slash projecting is not, right? Now, once I do that, well, what's to stop this blatant obviousness? If I am mind, if you are mind, what's to stop the blatant obviousness that it's not just something you made up, right? You need something else to reinforce the idea that you have a weak mind, that you're separate from this fella that you're projecting guilt onto, and that, you know, your mind, you're different. Essentially, you're different. And the way to do that, there's magical. Magical is the appropriate word here, but there's a magical antidote to the truth, in case you don't want that, which is bodies. What does a body do? Think about it. If you are infinite mind and you see someone else, someone who isn't you, what can you interpose between your mind and their mind to make it really look like you're not projecting? What about a wall of flesh? How about that? That's good, right? So you wrap a body around your mind, make yourself think you're in it, wrap a body around the person you're trying to project onto. Now they're in it, and guess what? Now you can say, look, I am innocent, I am clean. Over there, that person is guilty. And of course, you know, if you get deep into the course, it talks about all these things about how if you still have guilt in your mind, then, because you do, like, that doesn't mean you're guilty. To have guilt in your mind and to be guilty are two completely different things. In God's reality, there is no guilt. Nobody's guilty. And because God's reality is the only reality, then that's just the case. But that doesn't stop you from believing that you are guilty. And if you believe that you're guilty, then I lost my train of thought there. What was I going to say? Yeah, so if you believe that you're guilty, you're going to want to get rid of it, right? Giving is losing. Bodies. Now my body, because my body's clearly separate from this person who I projected guilt onto, then I can claim, I can walk into heaven's gates and say, look, I didn't do anything wrong. But that's not how it works. Giving is receiving. And so if I believe that someone is guilty in any way, that means I still believe in guilt, which means my mind isn't healed. So until I see perfect innocence in everyone, that's the only time that my mind will be fully healed. I have to see innocence without any exception, because any exception, if I recognize, I just need, just recognize that ideas leave not their source, that perception is projection. If there is guilt on anything, anywhere, anyone in the whole world, in the whole universe, in the whole multiverse, in whatever, universe or dimension that you're in, or think you're in rather, then your mind has a dark spot on it. And you put that there. You put that dark spot on. Now that's freedom. That's an expression of freedom. You have the freedom of thought. So you can freely believe anything you want, but that doesn't make it true. But what you believe will appear true to you because projection makes perception. So if I believe that someone is guilty, and then I perceive that, and I say, oh no, I didn't, that wasn't me, it's just, it's just so and so, and they did this horrible thing or whatever, but that's not me. And I try to go into heaven. Oh no, doesn't work. Why? Because I can't bring guilt into heaven. The two things are incompatible, right? I have to leave one behind. But luckily, there's an easy remedy for this, which is forgiveness. And forgiveness is essentially first of all, the recognition that giving is receiving, because you have to recognize that first in order for forgiveness to actually make sense. Otherwise, you don't know what you're doing. And you won't realize you're holding on to images that are mental fabrications, and you believe that your mental fabrications are reality, right? We call it schizophrenia. Actually, interestingly, schizophrenia actually means split mind. And really, if you think of a schizophrenic and you think about how they have thoughts that they think are real, well, we're all schizophrenic in that sense. If you believe you're a body, if you believe that your mind is separate, if you believe that what you see through your eyes was placed there not by you, then you're schizophrenic. It means you have a split mind. So first of all, you have to realize, imagine like a schizophrenic person walking around having hallucinations or whatever, and then suddenly going like, oh my god, these are my own thoughts. Oh wow, okay. They're no longer schizophrenic. And it's the same thing with forgiveness. To realize that you are living in a thought-created maze, or whatever it is to you, right? I mean, that's what thought is. You can make it whatever you want. But to realize that you are the maker of it means that you realize you have the capacity to remove the guilt stuff from your own mind, because that's where it is, right? It's in your own mind. It's nowhere else. And everything that you see through your eyes is just an expression of what you're holding in your mind, which is why all you need to do is heal your mind. And then when you have a healed mind, then that's just great. You're happy. And we're back to happiness, right? So the giving is receiving thought reversal is the antidote to the way that we think culturally. It's also the prerequisite to forgiveness, and forgiveness is what actually brings you happiness. So what's the fastest way to get what you want, right? And this is what the Course will say. When you choose the path of healing, when you choose to forgive, what you're actually choosing is your own will. Your own will. That means, like, when God created you, he willed you into being. He gave a piece of his being and expressed that as you so you can create in happiness and in joy. And you have a will, and that will is shared with God, right? It's one with God. So you have a will to create, to extend, to give. And that will is your will for happiness when you're existing in this illusion of guilt, right? So when you decide that you want happiness, then you're joining with your own will, right? Because it's like people say, oh, I want to be successful in this, I want that, I want to change the world in so and so way. Like, all of that is interposing unnecessary barriers between you and your happiness, and therefore it's actually not aligned with your own will, because your will is for your happiness. So if you realize that everything that you're doing in the world, you're looking for some kind of lasting happiness, if you realize that, then what happens is that you begin to wake up to this much easier, and actually the only path to true lasting happiness, which is forgiveness. And that's why forgiveness is the key to happiness. And that's why you join with your will, And when you join with your will, and you have that, you have your happiness, and you have forgiveness. Like forgiveness, forgiveness is your will. Like, so Jesus says in the Course, he says, I'm not going to get the words exactly right, but something like, I'm not trying to force you to do something. I'm trying to free your will, free your own will. He's talking about you. He wants you to be you, right? And that's all the Course is asking. The Course wants you to be you. There was a comment that someone said to me when I was explaining something about forgiveness on a forum, and someone said, "Oh, so I'm not allowed to do this?" And it's kind of like, it's not about what you're allowed or not allowed to do. Like, if you follow these classic, religious traditional ways of being, they'll give you rules. You must do this, you must do that, you must do that, and then this. But the thing about forgiveness is that by doing it, you receive instant happiness. So the proof is in the pudding. The results are contained within the action. You don't even need to have faith. You need to have a little bit of faith that you can forget about something for an instant and have something new come in. But like, you don't have to have this like, lifelong faith that when you'll die, hopefully you did all the right things, and even though they were hard to do and some of them caused you pain, like, at least you were, in the end, you were right. That's not how it works. Your will is for happiness, and happiness is a present moment thing. So when you actually practice forgiveness, you're actually receiving happiness in the present. And that's how you learn, right? It's like, if you eat disgusting food and you get a taste in your mouth, and you eat delicious food and it fills you with joy, it doesn't take you long to learn that actually you want to eat this one. You want to eat the good food, and forgiveness is the good food. And you learn that it brings you happiness by practicing it. Now, there's another small thing I just want to touch on here. Actually, I meant this video to be like 3 minutes, but here we are rambling. The other thing I wanted to touch on was the kind of all-encompassing nature of forgiveness. So the Course is taught at a very abstract level. And the reason why it's at an abstract level is because it can be generalized to everything. I've noticed that, like, sometimes when I'm talking to people, I get the impression that they think that A Course in Miracles is something you sort of learn on the side. And yes, it does have a workbook and you do practice it, but it's sort of like a hazy theoretical thing. But actually, if you understand what it's talking about, it's talking about every single moment of your waking and sleeping life. And so all the ideas that you're learning directly apply to everything that you encounter in the world. And, in the workbook, there's a quote, and again, I won't get this exactly right, but it says, like, even the smallest twinge of an annoyance is essentially a grievance. And like the standard, the bar, you set the bar for your life to be perfect happiness. Like, that's what you deserve. That's what God gave you. And so you just have to accept that. It's already yours. There's nothing you have to do to get it, but you won't be able to feel it if you're still holding on to images of guilt, because you're going to be focused on them, and that's going to bring you pain. So do you want happiness or do you want pain? And when I say happiness, I mean perfect happiness. I'm not talking about like, oh yeah, today was like a pretty good day. That's not the Course happiness. The Course happiness is like, do you feel full of joy? Do you feel absolutely full of joy? Do you feel in a state of perfect safety? Do you feel like completely at peace inside yourself? If you don't feel that way, it means you have grievances. And to have grievances doesn't mean you deserve punishment, right? Some people, like, I've noticed this, and it's understandable, because that's what we're raised with. Oh, you're doing it wrong. You're not allowed, right? That's not how it works. There's no like, you're not denied happiness because you have grievances. It's actually the holding on to the grievances that makes you not aware that you already have happiness. So that's like the role of the Holy Spirit, is to help you to kind of reorganize your your mind, so that you have so that your awareness of who you are is unobstructed, right? Because that's what a grievance is, an obstruction, right? Okay, let me just wrap this all up. A grievance is an obstruction to who you are. Who you are at your core, you've got the perfect happiness, you've got the perfect peace, you've got the perfect safety, you've got the creative joining with all of the beings who are part of the kingdom of heaven, which is essentially everyone. That is like the thing that never changes, even if you change your mind. Now you have the freedom to blot that out with dark blotches. You can do that. But when you do that, you hurt yourself and you feel pain. Now, if you experience that pain, you might want to hide it somewhere, right? So you might put it in the body. And you say, oh, my body's hurting. Oh. But really, it's not your body that's hurting. It's actually the blotches of darkness that you've blotted out the kingdom of heaven, which is a painful thing to do, because heaven is perfect happiness. So you've created an opposite. And if you have these blotches and it's painful, and you say the body hurts, well, the Course says the body doesn't actually feel at all. It has no feeling. You give it feeling. You say, oh, this pain, oh, it's coming from my arm, right? So you have this pain, and then you have these grievances, and the grievances make others seem guilty. So you learn, like, Course is about learning. You learn in your mind, like, tangent. Some people, I've noticed, some people talk about this, like, okay, let me put it this way. The Course is written for you. The Course is written, like, unless you don't speak English, the Course is written for you. If you don't speak English, you can get it translated, or maybe there's some other book that says the same stuff. But like, the Course is made for you, and it's meant to be understood at an intellectual level. It's not meant to be understood theoretically as an abstract thing on the side that you just kind of think about every now and then. It's made to be understood, like, actually intellectually, with your brain, with your mind, not with your brain, because your brain doesn't think, right? But like with your mind, these ideas are they're designed to be understood. They're not supposed to be confusing. If it's confusing, you just don't understand it yet, and that's fine. But like, I've seen people talk about how, like, the Course is meant to be, like, if you're reading it and you're confused, that's a normal thing, or that it's not that it's supposed to happen, but it means that you're kind of on the right track. Like, if you're reading the Course and it's confusing, it means you need some clarity. That's all. And maybe if you continue to read it, you'll get that clarity. Or maybe you talk about it with people, you'll get some clarity. But the point is, it's meant to be understood for you, and it's understandable. It is understandable. It's not talking to some ethereal being that's behind your mind, and you just read the words and you think somehow it's entering into something beyond you. No. That's not how it works. It's literally talking to you, just the same way I'm talking to you right now. It talks to you as a thinking being who's capable of having ideas and learning new things. So you learn that giving is receiving. You understand that perception makes projection. You understand that ideas leave not their source. And then you apply that to every single little twinge of annoyance that you experience for your entire life, no matter how severe it is, no matter how mild it is, it doesn't matter. You realize that, oh, I'm annoyed, that means I'm holding a grievance, right? And then you can invite the Holy Spirit, you can do however you want to do it. The point is that you have that grievance, and then you decide, actually, I want to be happy. I want to join with my will. I want to be myself. I want to be happy. I would rather be happy than be miserable. Like, you just make that choice, and you know, because you know that giving is receiving. Now you know. Now you don't have any excuse anymore. Now you know that giving is receiving. That means that you have the key to your happiness. No one can take it away from you. Nobody can say, oh, no one can cause you pain. No one can oppress you. Nobody can hurt you. Nobody can take away anything that God gave you, because what God gave you is eternal and ever present. Only you. You have the key, right? The key is forgiveness. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. So just make the choice. Just choose happiness.